Welcome back to the Tallapoosa Publishers podcast. This is Henry Zimmer, sports editor with the Alex City Outlook and Dadeville Record.
This is Dalton Middleton with Elmore County sports editor down here with Wetumpka and Tallahassee.
And we're going to talk about the Battle for the County 7-on-7 tournament hosted by Wetumpka last week. It is a 7-on-7 football tournament, a big tune-up for all the Elmore County schools. Dalton braved the rain there for the tournament and got to see some good 7-on-7 football, kind of a preview for what to expect for this summer and this fall. So Dalton's going to kind of walk us through what happened and kind of who the big names were for each team. We're going to start with Wetumpka, who defended their tournament crown for the second straight season.
Yeah, this is a tournament where all, you want to say all 6 teams in the county are invited, but really it's only 5. Poor little Edgewood doesn't make the cut.
Poor Edgewood.
But Wetumpka, which has hosted back-to-back years, went on to win it again for the second straight year. There's a few storylines with Wetumpka this year I didn't really know how they were going to do. Obviously, they lost Nate Rogers,
right,
which has been a 3-year starter, one of the, best quarterbacks in recent history, probably outside of the state championship run a few years ago in 2017. But they looked the part. New quarterback, he loves to throw the deep ball. Tyler Johnson, he actually played here at Wetumpka as a 9th grader. He won a game because Nate was hurt against Stanhope. He came in and threw the game-winning touchdown in the last second of the game in a thriller. He transferred out, came back for senior year, and he was on fire. Made a lot of great throws. Him and Evan Dillard had a really good connection. Evan Dillard, is it doesn't look like much. I think he's about 5'6", wide receiver, and he had 8 touchdowns on the day. He had 4 against Stanhope, lit them up, and Wetumpka went on, and I think they beat Stanhope like 37-2. They, beat Holtville in the semifinals 33-27. Was a great game where they stopped Holtville on the 3-yard line to win it. And then they went out and beat Tallahassee 18-17 in the championship, and they got Tallahassee got a last-second chance at it, and Wetumpka got a defensive stop, forced a sack as time expired, and walked away with their trophy again.
And we were talking a lot about transfers, you and I, previously, before we got on the podcast, and obviously Tyler Johnson's one of those guys for Wetumpka. Does Wetumpka have any other guys, or are they mostly the same roster as last year, except for graduates?
They're going to have most of the same roster. There's going to be one more impact transfer, really, and his name's Justin Godwin. He's a defensive back at Chilton County last season, all-state guy. He had 5 interceptions last year for Chilton County. He comes into Wetumpka, and he immediately made his name known on Friday night. I think he had 2 interceptions. He had 1 early in the day against Elmore County or Holtville or somebody, and then caught 1 later in the day. And they're expecting him to step in and probably be probably one of the best people on the roster, if not the best player on the roster. And so he's going to be a huge impact for Wetumpka. And
speaking of Tallahassee and transfers, new coach for Tallahassee, new look for Tallahassee, coming in second place at the tournament. They've got a whole slew of different storylines going on with them. Dalton, where do you want to start with the runners-up for the Battle of the County?
Yeah, so Tallahassee, new coach coming off a 1-9 season. They lost so many skill guys, so many players that have transferred out over the last few years, and a lot of those guys are back now. They got some new ones coming in, and this is a whole brand new Tallahassee team. They lost 1 game, that was it, to Wetumpka in the championship by 1 point. They tied Elmore County once, 12-12, and then just kind of cruised the rest of the way. But the big storyline is obviously the transfers. You get Josh Griffin coming back. He was a Tallahassee kid as a sophomore, transferred out to Montgomery Catholic last year, led Catholic to the state championship in 4A, had over, I think it was 1,400 rushing yards, a lot of touchdowns, was a stellar player for them. But he is not the only transfer they got. Kevin Mason, which you were quite familiar with.
Yes, from Southern Prep.
He comes in from Southern Prep. He's a quarterback for Southern Prep. I think he threw for 48 touchdowns last year.
He set the HSA record for touchdowns in a season and touchdowns in a game.
Yeah, he had, I think it was 11 touchdowns in a game once, or 9 touchdowns in a game, or something like that. Had a fantastic season last year for Southern Prep, and he is now playing receiver for Tallahassee.
A little skill for him.
He, Tallahassee's got a quarterback, Trent Morris, who's already, pretty good. And Kevin Mason came in, and he moved to receiver, playing backup quarterback, but really just going to focus on receiver, getting his hands better. But he is very shifty, very fast. He's going to be an impact guy for them. I think he has been with the program like 3 weeks, and he's already, starting wide receiver 1. So
I'm looking at Kevin's numbers from last year, 3,100 plus yards passing, 43 passing touchdowns, also 14 rushing touchdowns, and over 1,300 yards on the ground. So clearly Kevin's got some athletic skill he can use, and it looks like Tallahassee already found that out a little bit.
Yep, and they got two other kids. They got Tiny Green from Dadeville. He would play linebacker for Dadeville, a little bit of running back. I think he's going to just be a depth piece on linebacker for them and play that kind of role. And then they got an offensive lineman from Pike Road. I don't know his name, and I don't know much about him. I do know he's young, and he's a big old kid. But they don't really know the extent of what role he's going to play yet next year. I think he's a freshman or sophomore. But other than that, those are kind of the two big transfer stories with Wetumpka and Tallahassee. There's a few others. Holtville looks like, I don't know if you can consider this a transfer or not. Keelan Baker stepped away from the football program, former All-State quarterback for Holtville. Stepped away before his senior year, and in comes Braylon Hunt. He was, full arm sleeve tattoo. I was like, who is this kid? And so I talked to Coach, Corey Lee afterwards, and he came from the Edge. And so he's, an in-county guy. He just, was kind of homeschooled at the Edge, whatever. He came in, looks pretty good. He's got he made a few good reads. He's got the arm talent. He's just got to continue making those reads, but that looks to be QB1 in Holtville this year, so we're going to see how that works out. And then Elmore County, I think as far as I know, the real big transfer is Eli Timms from Wetumpka, which is a running back. He transferred sometime in the spring. He was there during the spring season, and he's probably going to end up being starting running back or being a big impact guy in that backfield. But that's really kind of all the transfers, and every single one of those guys were on display in the 7-on-7 tournament. Wetumpka finishes first, Tallahassee second. Elmore County and Holtville 3 and 4, Stanhope 5th. I don't think Stanhope got a win the whole night. They had a pretty rough showing, but they will look much better once you put the pads on and they have an offensive line and can run down your throat. So,
you want to touch a little bit on Holtville, Elmore County, and Stanhope, kind of finishing out that tournament? Just kind of anything you may have seen, anything the coaches told you, or anything we should look for moving forward with those three programs.
Well, I thought Elmore County played it was probably one of the most exciting days. They looked pretty good. Caleb Spivey was taking reps at quarterback. He looked good. He's thinned up a little bit. He was looking good. Gage Davis was also taking some snaps at quarterback. I think Spivey probably looked a little bit better to me. But they're probably going to rotate that out until someone wins that spot. But they played in some exciting games. They were up on Tallahassee. I think it was 12-6. And then they basically ran out of time, and they gave Tallahassee one play, and of course Trent Morris finds Josh Griffin for a last-second Hail Mary tied up. They didn't let him go for the extra points. They just called it a tie. And then when they rematched in the semifinals, Tallahassee was up 12-7, and Elmore County drove all the way down the field and had 6 plays basically from the 10-yard line or shorter. And on the last one, there was like 7 seconds left. It was supposed to be 4th down or 3rd down. I don't even know, honestly. But one ref called incomplete pass, which would have stopped the clock. One called a sack, which would have kept the clock going. And so they didn't know what happened. Time ran out. They got together. They gave Elmore County one untimed play, and they didn't. And Tallahassee knocked down the goal line. But for Holtville, obviously the biggest story for them going forward is Braylon Hunt at quarterback. But C.J. Lee, who had a really good freshman year last year, he impressed a lot. I think he scored 3 touchdowns against Wetumpka in the semifinals in that 33-27, and then he was about to score a 4th one, but ended up getting stopped at the 3-yard line. But really, that's kind of the big storylines. We're going to see more about Stanhope whenever they get pads on and start running the ball. That 7-on-7 wasn't really their strong suit this summer.
Sweet. And that pretty much wraps up 7-on-7 stuff for this coming week. We'll be at a dead week a little bit. Do you guys have anything coming up on the horizon that you know of?
Not this week, obviously, with the dead week, but I think next week Wetumpka is going to start some more OTAs. Holtville's going to start some more OTAs. I need to get out to Wetumpka because they have a really, really good defensive line this year. Some guys like J.D. Denmark, Elijah Peak, those guys like that. Ethan Bailey's picking up some D1 offers, so I want to see those guys getting some action this summer because from what Bear says, Bear Woods, he really believes that they could have 3 or 4 Division I defensive linemen on this roster. So we're going to see how that goes.
And that'll work. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Tallahassee Publishers Sports Podcast. I was Henry. That was Dalton, and we'll see you on the next one.
This has been the sports edition of TPI the Podcast, a production of TPI Media. Community journalism is vital to America. If you value trustworthy reporting, please consider supporting us by clicking the link in the show notes.